Hey everybody, it's Mr. Loose, and your technique of the week is acrylic. So, acrylic paint is a modern type of paint that has plastic in it, and this allows the paint to dry a lot faster than other paints so that you can layer your paints faster, or if you don't want to spend years and years and years working on it, it'll dry quicker, unlike oil paints, which can take at least one full year to completely dry. And so that's a really cool modern convenience with acrylic paint. But at the same time, because it dries so fast, you want to make sure that you're really paying attention to what you're doing and not playing around or delaying yourself, because it can really hurt you if it dries too fast, because then you can't go back and fix it and you might have to start all over. So with acrylic paint, I'm just going to show you 6 techniques that I feel are the most used and the most useful for you when you're doing your artwork. So the first one we're going to do is called a wash. And a wash is a very, very simple painting technique. And you can do a wash with any paint, not just acrylic. You can do it with watercolor or oil. All you're doing is you're getting some paint on your brush, and you just dip it in the water, and you're going to have just a very soft, watered down application of paint. That's all you're going to have. And this is great when you're starting off a painting, like if you want to completely cover the entire canvas with a wash of the colors, like of one color that you see throughout your painting. That's a great idea. Or just to get that first application of paint on there and then build up from. So a wash is just a very simple watered down application of paint. Okay. Now the next one we're going to do is the complete opposite. So this one we had extremely watered down paint. This next one we're going to use a very dry brush. So this brush has not interacted with water at all. It's extremely dry and fresh. So I'm going to dip my brush in the paint, and then on my palette or on a paper towel, you're just going to kind of run your brush back and forth. And what that's going to do is dry it out, so that when you start painting, your brush is extremely dry. It's not even wet from the paint, and it gives it this scratchy, furry look. And this is called dry brush or scumbling, because you are literally painting with a dry brush. That's pretty cool. All right, before we move on, I'm going to go down here to where it says glazing, and with some black paint, and you don't have to use black, you can use any color. I'm just using black as my example. I'm going to paint a very light layer of paint. Okay, I'm just going to paint my initial. I'm not painting it on too thick. Okay, and we're going to leave that alone, and we're going to come back to this later. I just want this J to be dry. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now so that it will dry when we get to it. The next thing that we're going to do is called sgraffito. And sgraffito is one of my favorites, and that's when you lay down a very thick amount of paint onto your paper. Okay. So you lay the thick layer of paint on. Just a little bit more. And then with the handle of your brush, you can go in and you can scratch or draw in the paint. So I'm going to draw some clouds. So that's really cool. So all I did was paint a thick layer of paint, and then using the handle of my brush, I went back and drew. And you don't have to draw clouds. You could draw anything you want. The world is your canvas. Okay. So now we're going to move on over to Impasto. Impasto is also one of my favorites, and that is when you use a palette knife. A lot, and I mean a lot of artists will use palette knives instead of brushes. And I'm going to show you how you do that. You just dip it in the paint, and you come over and you just start applying the paint onto your paper, your canvas, whatever you want to paint. And you're just laying down these thick, beautiful textured applications of paint. You can see how different that looks. Because when I'm using the knife, it doesn't like put the paint down the same way that a brush would. And you can do large swabs. You can do short ones. You can use both sides. You can scratch away on it if you wanted to. I mean, look at that. It's absolutely amazing. Look at all those thick applications of paint. So that's really cool with a palette knife. So a palette knife can be used just like a brush. Like you can paint with this instead. So if you wanted to do a whole painting that was realistic, it doesn't have to be abstract. Anything you wanted, you could paint with this. You just lay it down differently. So that's really cool. I love palette knives. All right. So now we're going to go down to the double-loaded brush. So this one tends to be all of my students' favorites because you dream about this and you never think that you'll get the chance to do it. So you get your paintbrush, and I'm going to dip the side, just this side, in one color of paint, like that. So that's all I have. The paint is on one side. I'm then going to take the other side, and I'm going to dip that into a different color paint. All right, so I've got yellow paint on one side, green on the other. Okay. And then all you do is paint. I mean, look at that. That's what dreams are made of right there. Isn't that cool? I mean, you've got the green and the yellow. And you don't even have to paint just like a squiggly. You could paint anything you wanted and just load up all these different colors on your brush and just start going crazy. That's actually the way that I like to paint. I like to grab a bunch of different colors, just put my brush into all these different things, and then just go at it on the canvas and see how they all mix on their own and what they create. That's why my palette is such a beautiful, beautiful creation itself, because I just love mixing all those colors. All right, now I'm going to go in. I'm going to check. Is my J dry? My J is dry. Perfect. So what we're going to do is you're going to get a color, preferably a lighter one. Okay. That doesn't take a whole lot of paint. You're going to put it in the water, kind of creating a wash. Okay. And you're going to paint a very soft, light layer of paint. And see how it just painted right on top of it? It kind of, there's still a little wet paint right there. But all I had to do, whoop, there it is. There's a little bit of wet paint. But all I have to do is paint a very soft layer, watered layer of paint on top of something, and this is called glazing. Okay, glazing. So this paint was still just a little bit wet, that's why it did that. But the great thing with acrylic paint is that it dries really fast. So after you go and paint something and let it dry, then you can go back and do a wash on top of it, and that is called glazing. So that's a really cool effect. So if you instead of going in and doing a wash and then painting on top of that, you could paint everything and then do the wash on top. It's like reverse. So that's called glazing, okay? Well, I hope this helps and gives you some great creative ideas to go make some beautiful artwork, and have fun.